Should you have sex on the third date? Should you let the guy pay for everything? Should you really be waiting for hours before responding? And is it an absolute no-no to talk about your exes on a first date? Welcome to the Date with Confidence podcast, a place to come for dating advice, support, and stories that'll either fill you with hope or relief that your dating experience wasn't as bad as it could have been. With practical episodes that'll provide you with easy to implement tips to help you feel confident AF on your next date, alongside light-hearted catch-ups where your host Rebecca, that's me by the way, shares her own experience dating after 4 years of the single life. You are guaranteed to end each episode feeling less alone in your dating struggles, empowered to never settle again, and confident that the best is yet to come. And if it all falls to shit, there's a special first season dedicated to breakups. You are welcome, my friend. Subscribe, review, and share with your single friends. These are all rules that I have heard about dating in the past. Like when I was younger, I remember it must have been like in my 20s, like when I was dating then, there was this whole idea around the like date number 3 being the date that you had sex on. That was just the rule. That was the thing that happened. If you made it to date 3, you got the sex over and done with. I say over and done with, like maybe you just wanted to have the sex. It's fine. But that's something that has always been like been a thing. And if you watch films in like the 90s or the early 2000s or things like Sex and the City, like it's kind of expected that you have sex relatively early on in the dating process. And I wanted to touch on this and talk about the dating rules, not even dating rules, like talk about the idea of ditching all the dating rules, because firstly, I don't really agree with rules. To be perfectly honest, I don't think that we should be putting this pressure on ourselves, on our dating life, on our experiences. I don't think we should be saying like, this is what needs to happen by this point in time. Now, I have been single for a very long time. I've been single for nearly 4 years now. And back in the day when I was dating in my 20s, I was into the idea of hooking up with people, not necessarily having sex like quickly, but kissing on the first date was not a problem. Like absolutely, kiss on a first date, flirt on a first date, hook up, great. That was something that I was quite open to. Whereas now, I think having done so much work on myself and having got to the point where I know exactly what I want, I know exactly what I deserve, the attraction stuff, like the physical stuff, isn't as important to me now. And there is not a chance in hell that I would be ready to have sex with someone on a third date, I don't think. Unless I was just interested in casual dating, in sleeping around for a little while, if that was the vibe that I wanted, if that's what I wanted, if that was where I was kind of heading with my dating life, absolutely not a problem. But I'm dating very intentionally. I'm not dating to go out there and get a boyfriend immediately. I'm very open to date around, to meet new people, to have new experiences, to explore a little bit. As I said, I've been single for a long time. I've been out of the game for a long time. I want to enjoy it and I want to have fun. So I'm not like, I've got to date, I've got to get a boyfriend, I need to be in a relationship. I've always been somebody that is very content being single. I am not somebody that has to be in a relationship. My previous relationships have happened organically without me actively seeking them out. So it's not it's just not something that I need. And now when I'm dating, I've been on quite a few dates, first dates, second dates, and I haven't even kissed the guy. And I don't think that's a problem. For me, I don't think that's a problem. I'm very much more interested in in seeing if there is an emotional connection before there's a physical connection, which is very different to how I was in my 20s. In my 20s, things were led with lust, things were led with the physical side of things. That was what attracted me to someone. The physical chemistry was what led me to relationships with people, and the emotional connection came afterwards. But that's not always put me in a good point. That's not always put me in healthy relationships. So now it's very important for me, especially if as I am dating older and as I am thinking more about settling down. I want to have kids at some point. There's like a limit, like in terms of being a woman, like there's only so long that you can have kids for. I'm dating very intentionally, and as part of that, I want that emotional connection. And I'm not trying to form an emotional connection with people. I'm exploring and meeting people and seeing whether that emotional connection is there or has the capacity to be there. And I really like that. And if I kind of followed these dating rules of having sex on the first date, then I don't think that would be there. Likewise, things like expecting the guy to pay for everything. That's not how I would expect our relationship to be. So whilst I very much appreciate it when a guy pays for a date or pays whilst we're dating, I don't expect my relationship to be like that. So in some ways, I don't necessarily want the dating experience to be like that, because if you're dating and you're almost like experiencing what a potential relationship could look like, I just want it to be very natural and organic, and I don't want to put those expectations on anyone that I'm dating. I'm happy to split the bill. I'm happy to be equal. As I said, I find it very attractive when a guy does pay for stuff, especially when it's not expected. I like it. I appreciate it. I find it really attractive, but it's not something that I would expect from anyone, especially if I know that I'm not going to see them again. And I talked about this more in a Q&A episode that I shared, so you might want to have a listen to that one. I also think about the whole like waiting hours to respond. I was on a date with a guy recently, and he said that there was this like trick or like game that some girls play where they'll like leave you on red for hours and hours to see how you respond. So almost like a test to see how the other person would respond to being left on red. And I don't want any of these games. I don't want a relationship that's based on games, because I've had that in the past as well, where there's been games during the dating process, and that's been quite fun. It's been like, you know, when it's almost like a challenge and it's like hot cold and a guy makes you work for it. I used to like a challenge because it kept it interesting and it kept it exciting. I'm not about that now. I've very much changed what I want and realising what I deserve. I'm not about game playing. So if someone messages me, I'm going to respond when I see it and when I want to. And if I read it and can't respond immediately, that's not a test. That's I'm busy, I'm going to respond when I can. But at the same time, I also wouldn't just sit there and be like, oh, okay, he texted me, like, I need to leave it an hour so that he doesn't think I'm too keen. Like, no, I'm not about game playing. And the other thing that I mentioned as well, the whole talking about exes on a date. I've been on a few dates with a guy recently, and we have talked quite in depth about our past relationships and experiences within our past relationships. And I believe that this is actually quite healthy, because in discussing our pasts, we understand more about what the other person is looking for, what would work for the other person, what wouldn't work for the other person. For example, if I shared something about, this wasn't even a conversation that we had, but for example, if I shared how my ex would go out all night and not come home and rock up at 7 o'clock in the morning and then have a go at me because I was worried about where he'd been, and then the guy that I was dating was like, oh yeah, well, I go out with my mates every weekend, there would be a there would be an imbalance. Or if I shared that story and he was like, yeah, but the guy was out, like, why would you need to know where he was, kind of thing, there would be an imbalance already. So we'd straight away know this would not work for us, because my expectation is I am not going to be with someone who thinks it's acceptable to stay out all night and not give me some reassurance of where they are, so that I don't worry that they're either A, fucking someone else, or B, dead in a ditch. And part of that perhaps comes from my own insecurity in previous relationships, because there's been that like lack of trust. But also, yeah, I think it's important to discuss certain things about previous relationships, and that's kind of worked for me really well. And back to the kind of physical stuff, it's interesting. I've been seeing a guy, not for very long actually, but we've had a few dates, and I feel like there's a genuine emotional connection there. I find him extremely attractive, but what's interesting is the attraction has come the more I've got to know him. Whereas when I was younger, the attraction would come first and then I'd get to know them, but I'd be so like obsessed with how much I fancied them. If I didn't like them, it didn't matter, because I fancied them and their chemistry was there. This guy, I obviously found him attractive to like agree to go on a date with him. Like visually, I found him attractive. And then the more we've got to know each other through the conversations that we've had, through the dates we've been on, we've had fun together, he's got more and more and more and more attractive. It's like I'm attracted to his mind, I'm attracted to the way that he communicates, and I'm attracted to him physically. And that's just built up. And what's interesting is there hasn't been any intimacy as such. Like, we haven't kissed yet. And I never, when I was younger, I would have always thought, if you get to the third date and you haven't kissed, it's like, what's going on then? Like, that's weird. Like, oh, this isn't going to go anywhere because there isn't that physical attraction. Yet we've had conversations about intimacy, and it's just like, that's nice. That the physical intimacy is going to come because the attraction is absolutely there, but it's going to come when it's ready, which I'm not going to lie, I'm kind of hoping it's going to be the next date. But I just think we should ditch all the dating rules, ditch the rules, talk about the exes, talk about what you want, share open, share honestly, share vulnerably, because in sharing those things, yes, some people will say it's more dangerous because, yes, I feel like I've opened up a hell of a lot. So now there is room for a hurt. Like, if rejection was going to happen, it would be upsetting. But I feel like making space and allowing yourself to open up for that connection is so important. Because if you're closed off, one thing that I also want to say about the dating rules, and I actually mentioned this on the date as well, a lot of people will go on dates as their best selves. So they will try and be the best version of themselves, try and put on a mask, try and be who they think the other person will respond well to. I haven't done that at all. I used to do it when I was younger because I felt like it probably comes from a place of like not feeling like enough and feeling like I have to be someone else to be attractive or to be wanted. That hasn't happened at all, specifically with these last few dates as well. And I think that's really important, because there's never going to come a point where all of a sudden the mask slips and the real me's revealed. We're forming this connection, whatever it is. As I said, it's been a few dates, maybe it'll be something, maybe it won't be something, but whatever has happened so far, that has come from our willingness to be open and honest and vulnerable with each other. And I think that gives you an insight into whether or not you would actually be compatible. Because if you don't open up in that way and you're both trying to be best versions of yourself and you connect from the best version of yourself, then what happens when the masks do start to slip and you do start to reveal your true colours, if you like, you're connecting with someone in a different way. It's not a genuine, authentic connection. As I said, like, ditch the dating rules. Behave however you want to behave on your date. Show up as yourself. And I also believe that in showing up as yourself, you invite the other person to be the same. And if they don't like who you are, then they weren't your person ever to start with. So you've literally got nothing to lose. And this is something that this is kind of what I talk about in the confidence course, really, about the confidence to be yourself, to be completely comfortable in your own skin, to be your authentic self. The confidence course helps you to be fully comfortable with who you are. And actually there is a module on raising your relationship standards, which you might find helpful. So check that out, check the show notes. And I'd love to hear what you think, actually. So do you think that there is a certain point where certain things need to be done or said? Do you think that it's a yes or a no to talking about your exes on dates? Do you think the guy should pay first? Give me your feedback, give me your thoughts. I'd love to hear from you. Message me on Instagram at RebeccaLucyH, or send me an email, hello@RebeccaLucyH.com. Share your thoughts, and whilst you're there, I would love it if you could rate and review this podcast on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts. It would mean the absolute world for me. To me, mean the absolute world to me. Okay, that's it. Thanks for listening. I will see you in the next one. Thanks so much for listening to the Date with Confidence podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Subscribe, rate and review, and share it with your single friends.